Hey guys, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much
Hey,
for having me.
You came
yeah,
on.
yeah. It's funny we didn't do a whole lot of video, and then once the kind of once everything went into lockdown and all that
Mm,
jazz, the technology advanced enough that Zoom, especially with being able to record, just made things easy, right? And
right.
I don't know
Yeah,
about
our
you
production
guys,
crew in the Massive Karate Cafe studio, it was amazing. Oh, I don't have to do an audio version and a video version.
yeah,
And where it was like the video version was almost like a castaway when we were doing it. I was like, okay, well, I've got a video version, whatever.
yeah.
And then Dan was like, put it on YouTube.
Put them on YouTube.
And then when I edited the video part, I was like, oh, then I just export the audio part.
Easy,
Oh,
Yeah,
and
and
easy.
YouTube is my favorite podcatcher. It's like,
Really?
yeah, I use it more than Spotify. I use it more than the Apple one. I think what it is that I I have stuff that I like to podcast that I like to watch that are
Mm,
video format,
sure.
and rather than doing half and half, I just say YouTube's my podcatcher, and I'm done with the
Yeah,
rest.
makes sense.
And a lot of people nowadays too, they stream just a static image with the audio in the background.
That's what we still do on most of our,
yeah,
our episodes. We use Libsyn as our platform. It just makes it really easy.
Okay. Yeah.
Just takes the
Yeah.
episode
So
graphic and throws it up.
I'm a big fan of YouTube.
Yeah. When we all went into lockdown, we suddenly didn't have to tell people what Zoom was
Right?
because we started using Zoom
right.
as a recording platform
Did you
in
really?
18. Yeah, I was on vacation, and the Julius, who does all of our wonderful work on the back end, I actually took a week off, not even 4 days off, and he emails me and says, "Hey Jeremy, these 5 episodes we've got in the can are blank, Skype recorded blank audio, and it's the one
Ah,
time we missed an episode
burn.
because I was like, and we had people who weren't willing to do it again, and it kills me to this day." And I had a fellow podcaster friend, and he had started using Zoom like about 3 months before that. And he said, you really got to check this out. I like it. It's simple. You don't need a separate plugin. It's more seamless.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, let's try it. And we'd reach out to people. We use Zoom. Zoom what? Like, what
Yeah,
are you talking about? Is it like, what's it like? Is it like FaceTime?
yeah. We had a
And now,
huge problem scheduling. Like we were using Skype, and we had to have a plug-in and and crossover app and blah blah blah, and then dump it out as one format and whatnot. And even with Skype, people were still fumbling around. And now, within the span of 12 months, everyone's smooth. Everyone's got
right.
much cooler mics than me, and they're just and it's we're circling around on an interview, and I've been talking to her for I don't know 3 or 4 years. And when we first started this process, I was like, oh well, we can record your thing by Zoom or by Skype, and she was like, okay, do I need a thing? And now she's like, oh yeah, sure, because everyone does Zoom meetings, so
Yeah.
It, it was amazing to me that that's what everybody's standardized on.
right,
It's so
yeah,
It's
fortunate.
I saw a funny cartoon that was like the CEO of it was I know what it was. It was a fake interview with the CEO of Skype going, Skype was a verb, for God's sakes. Like, and now
it
everyone
got
is
to be a Zoom.
zooming. What the hell happened? And I've always kind of wondered that myself. Like, how did things transition so quickly from
Yeah.
like people FaceTiming and Skyping to people zooming essentially? And it happened within the course of 2 or 3 months. It was
Well,
it
I
was
mean,
very
and
quick.
the technology, on the back end for us is great, but the technology on the front end was good because when I started my online class, I
Mm.
did it like normal, and I had a couple of cameras and and whatnot. But then one of my fellow brother instructors in the federation was like, "Use the breakout rooms, dude." I was like, "What?" I
Mm.
mean, I didn't even know about them, and I'm an IT guy. And then that was the next. So maybe that'll be the next level of podcasting. Be like micro podcasting of
Mm.
your people can watch your stream session, and then like Jeremy and Andrew, you guys can break people off into different rooms
Sub
and have
podcasts.
two different subjects of going, and then somehow merge them all together, and it would be like a huge Brady Bunch. It would be like 16
Right.
screens.
We call it a microcast. We should go get
That's
that
Micro.
right.
domain name.
Oh yeah. Oh quick.
Microcast.com.
Microcast.
Well, and how many, like when the lockdown happened, how many people tried to use other platforms for their classes. Like I did, because I didn't have
Yeah.
Zoom at first, so I tried like Facebook Messenger. You can have up to like 4 or 5 people, and I was like, I'll teach a little, a small session to some guys, and we tried it, and it didn't work very well. And someone recommended, oh, you should try this Zoom, like everybody's doing it.
What didn't work about it?
There was just, even though my internet connection was the same, there was still delay, and way more than there is with. I mean, Zoom has delay too, but it's
and that's
not,
also
not as bad.
That's when Google stood up their like sort of Teams, whatever.
Yeah.
I think they pulled the trigger on that just a little too soon. Like
Google Meet, yeah.
Yeah, like oh, get out the door quick! Someone, Zoom is filling the space, and we tried it for a little bit, and it didn't work very well because again, the rooms was like the killer app for us.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool stuff. Well, you guys have been doing this for a while. Andrew and I were talking before we got going, and he reminded me that you're kind of the OGs in the martial arts podcast space. You 05, right, Andrew? Isn't that what you said?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I've had to explain this to a couple people, like I didn't start it. And, that guy down there didn't start it, or over there, wherever it is. I don't know if you guys heard my rant a while back about wanting someone that develops for Zoom to be able to lock the windows in to like be able to, so when you have users, when they log in, say this user's gonna go over here, and this, because in my class I'm like pointing at stuff and it's mirrored and it's wrong. Pete Shambo and Gene Myers are the guys who actually started the podcast, and they're on the East Coast in New York State, and I like to call them like the Soke and the Hanshi of. But Gene got all worked up about that. He's like, dude, I'm only a fifth dan. Don't. My stretcher will get mad, but they actually started it, and I came on as a guest, and same way that I pulled Dan into this mess.
Yeah.
And then they just had me stick around, and then when they
sound familiar, Andrew?
away, yeah,
very familiar.
And then then I kind of inherited it, and so yeah, we've been going. I mean, you've got like 8 million episodes, so we gotta take our time to lovingly handcraft. It's small batch artisanal podcast.
If you can't do it well, do it often. So we're just we're gunning for, I don't know, episode 1,000, 5,000. We'll see how many of these we can get knocked out. We might start releasing clips, and just 50 a day, just so we can push that episode count up.
That might even better the micro podcast of like
whistlekick microcast.
It's accuracy by volume.
Yeah, exactly.
It's 3 seconds of irrelevance.
Right in the middle of a sentence, like not at the beginning of the like somewhere in the preposition. You just and then put it down and let people try and piece it together.
And then
just because I was curious, I went out. A buddy and I started a podcast called Podzor, Podxor, where we talked about like just geek stuff and martial arts.
Nice.
And our first episode was August 5th, 2005.
Wow.
Yeah. Of course, that podcast is defunct, but still after Karate Cafe. That's true.
We actually had I don't know if you guys had ever caught the episodes back in the day. There was another martial arts podcast out of Texas, out of Dallas, by an instructor guy there. I'm not going to mention any names, but anyway, he got really, really mad because he kind of, I guess he thought he was the first, or whatever, and he was he would like send me emails and like he'd bicker on his show and whatnot, and he actually at one point accused Pete at that time of hacking the internet to set the date of when he registered the domain and put the first show on. And I was like, so this, but whatever your political meaning is like that's sort of the beginning of the fake news world of like, did you honestly think we, so
man, I would
the
name
whole
that
internet
guy if I could remember his name.
It's a lot of skill.
Hacked ICANN to say, okay, I'm gonna, move my podcast, registration date back, a month, because he did it like 2 months after or something like that. And I was like,
and what would have been your rationale for doing that if someone had done that, like to get all of this amazing podcast money?
Right.
Oh, man.
Right.
Woo!
It's the podcast riches from being 2 weeks earlier than the other guy.
It's Karate Cafe coin, I don't know.
It's an interesting subject because it so very much parallels the sort of offline arguments that happen in our industry all of the time
Oh
for
yeah,
no
yeah.
reason, right? You know, you're not legitimate. Your belt, blah 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 blah. Your
Yeah.
certificate that was for, all this posturing and ego and this
Yeah.
BS. And that's a recurring theme on our show, talking about that, trying to unpack that, understand it. Do you guys talk about that much?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was the kind of, we talk about it sort of in a roundabout way. Again, you may have noticed, and listening to the shows where I talk about the massive Karate Cafe studio, uh, because again, the same cat was talking about how much work he put into his podcast, blah blah blah. And he says, I put all this money into this massive studio, but he doesn't remember that a month or three before that, he had posted something on his website of a picture of his podcasting area, and it was like a Mac and a nicer mic
Right.
than me. And okay, I get the mic thing, guys, but and just a Mac and a
He had
thing,
a
just
nicer
like,
mic than you 15 years ago.
yeah,
Wow.
again, waiting for the podcast money, and
Right.
then anyway,
Maybe
so that
that's
was
what's
what,
holding it up.
right? Maybe it's caught up in litigation.
It's
I can't really talk about it, guys. I can't
one
really
If
talk
one
only
about
mic
it.
you'd,
one mic to rule them all.
if
Well,
only you'd come out 2 weeks earlier.
Right.
if only.
If
First
only.
first mover advantage. Yeah.
As soon as the the lawsuit going through the domain of the internet is settled, then it's all going to come rolling in. But anyway, but he referred to it as a massive studio, and I'm like, okay, well, I have just a massive studio, so but yeah, I mean, but yeah, it was so funny that argument then moved into this space, which is not actual. I mean, no real monetary advantage. There's no, although I did end up getting his sponsor. Uh, the the yeah, it moved right over into this space.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. People think that because there's attention on the internet that money follows. And I find that, our rule of thumb internally is roughly 1%. Anything you put out, 1% of people will do something about it.
Well,
Comment,
it's
they'll watch, they'll
yeah.
comment, they'll engage in some way.
Yeah. That call to action is really, really difficult to overcome. And, I kind of learned this lesson. I don't know how long you guys have been listening, but I have a product called the Dojo Manager that I kind of built from scratch
Mhm.
to help people manage their students in their dojo. It's kind of an abandoned project at this point. And the reason that it was abandoned is because, it's, you just can't get it. It's a, if you build it, they will come. Well, if you build it, most of the time they won't, right? Most of the time they won't show up because
Hey, I used
together
that thing for
with,
years.
yeah, I mean, together with the building skills, you need the marketing skills, you need the, there's a whole cloud of things that surround the core thing that you're doing. And I think, it's just like dojo owners, for example.
Yeah,
It's a lot like, yeah, it's a lot like being a chef. So if if you're a great chef and you say, I'm going to open a restaurant, and you open a restaurant and your restaurant fails 2 years later, well, you could still be a great chef, but
Right.
maybe you're just terrible at running a business. And
oh yeah, it's a direct parallel to to martial arts of
it is because it's so talent oriented in one domain,
Right.
but then to run a business, there's so many things that you need to be smart about. Otherwise, you need financial management skills, and you need marketing skills, and you need all these other things that genuinely have to happen. One of the things that Paul and I talk about is the difference between students and customers, right? So most dojos have this cluster of students that are a much smaller group than their customers, and
Sure.
those are the people that stay after class and ask questions, or help instruct at breakout sessions, or come to seminars not to be in the seminar but to help out. Though everybody knows those students, and probably the four of us were those kinds of students, right? And those are the people that you hold close to your heart and that you pay attention to. And unfortunately, the rest are customers. Doesn't mean you love them any less, but it just means that they're not as engaged in the martial arts aspect of what you're teaching them. Maybe they're coming for exercise and community, and that's really all they care about. It's no different than doing a group workout for them. And
Yeah, and
so,
it's the same thing with the allegory for the podcasting because
yeah,
we we constantly ask. I mean, just like you guys, give us some comments, give us some feedback, give us some whatever, and so it's sometimes I'm shouting into the void. I'll put
yeah.
out like this really good episode. Have a really good interview, whatever, throw it on there, and it's like crickets. And then I was like, does everyone just agree with me? Which is kind of cool, but that's not what the whole purpose.
Right.
The thrust of our podcast is this is where the conversation starts, right? This is where I want us to all talk about it. I want you to, like I love it. Andrew's been giving me lots of feedback, and it's fantastic. I was like, ooh, cool, I get to do that, or I'll hear you did one of your episodes, and I'll go like, oh, that's kind of a, and I'll. But then I like look at our Facebook or our forum. We used to have a forum, but way back in the day, kids,
Oh, that's right. I forgot about
there
that
was a thing
forum.
called a forum, and we had that, and I carried that for like probably 3 years longer. That There was nothing going on.
Yep.
I'd
Yeah.
post a show, I'd post a thing, put the comments here, maybe get one, after 6 months, But and now with YouTube, same thing. Is like I put it on, like you get a thumbs up, but you don't really
Yeah.
get the comments, and I really want people to comment. I really
Yeah.
want people to start, not be kind of a customer or a client. I was watching an episode of a show the other day, and they were talking about he went one level up. He said there's customers, there's clients, and then there are students. And he said, there's customers that just kind of come in and do the things. There's clients that you're kind of providing a service for. You're teaching them something. They're taking something in,
Mm.
whatever, and they have a goal, kind of thing. And then there are students, and so I throw it out there. But I want people to start talking. I want people to start talking to each other. Just like
Yeah.
you guys said, hey, let's all get together and talk about this.
Yeah.
It, because in my dojo, I always tell people, especially when they come in from different, systems and whatnot, I'm like, ask me the question. Just ask me, let's talk about it. You're a martial artist. I'm a martial artist. You do this style. I do that style. Just talk to me. And I don't, it's don't compartmentalize. Don't, try and shut it down. Don't make it a single stream. Let's just talk about it.
I think we're at this time now where there's just such an overwhelming amount of effort going into vying for people's attention
Yeah.
that when I started the show, I wanted the same sort of thing, because I was listening to podcasts like yours, like a few others, possibly like the one that you're referencing. I'm gonna have to go back and I was listening to Haya, right? Like,
Yeah.
they were around. And so I wanted to do, something similar, but with my own take. And I wanted all this conversation because I like conversation. I double
Yeah.
majored in philosophy and computer science just to continue the martial arts nerd intersection that continues to be a thrust on this show. But I wanted that conversation and it wasn't happening. And so what I started to shift into was, okay, if I know that I'm getting some of their mind share, but I'm not getting their words coming back, I'm going to shift what I'm saying, how I'm saying, so it can be a little more compartmentalized. That's where the Thursday shows settled into was, here's a topic. I'm going to unpack it the way I see it, and I'm going to give it to you, and you run with it. You think about it. I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care if you disagree with me. I care that you think about it. And that's really become a core part of what we do. Andrew and I talk about that, frequently. And what's happened with our show, and I'm going to suspect yours as well, is a lot of those conversations don't happen publicly. They don't happen in an open forum. I get messages, I get emails, I get texts from people who know me personally. I liked what you said here. I didn't like what you said here. Here's my feedback
Interesting.
on this. They're less willing to have that engagement publicly. And part of it might be the culture that we have now, where
Yeah.
a lot of people are nervous about having an open, vulnerable conversation, be it about martial arts or literally anything else, because at the very least, someone's probably going to jump down your throat, make you feel bad about yourself, unless you've toughened up by putting your most private thoughts out on the internet for 6 years and you don't care anymore. Or
Right.
it could have professional consequences for you. We had a gentleman on the show who longtime listeners will be able to unpack this. I can point to you guys offline, or Andrew can tell you. He came on the show and literally the day of release got canceled.
Wow.
Some horrendous things came to light. And we had an internal discussion about, do we pull this show? What do we do? We've left it out there.
Wow.
So you can track it back if you want, but it's you can't get away from him, and I think that's what is going on with a lot of people. They just don't want to step in.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that society will has a tendency, in my opinion, to oscillate between two extremes.
Mm.
And right now we're really in the kind of cancel culture extreme, and I do think that eventually we'll backtrack to sanity a little bit, where we're we're really, as a society, we're pretty young with having all of everyone's stuff exposed all the time, right?
Yeah.
It blows my mind when we realize that Twitter's like 10 years old, not even something like that. I don't know exactly, but it's not as old as you would
It's not
think.
that old. Yeah.
Yeah, and so especially from a popular perspective, it's even more recent. So this kind of stuff, I think society takes some time to adjust to, and just be like, oh well, maybe we should be a little bit more forgiving to people, because, well, and maybe we shouldn't be so damn public all the time, right? Like,
Right.
maybe there are some thoughts, and I don't know about you guys, and maybe this is, I like kind of the making the sausage episode, right? Is that I don't know
There's the
about you
title.
guys, but sometimes the opinion that I express on the show may not even be necessarily mine, right?
Yeah.
I might express opinion to be a balance point for something Paul is saying,
Mhm.
right? I'll play devil's advocate so that we can just have an exchange.
Yeah.
And I might totally agree with what he's saying, but I'll pretend that I don't, because otherwise it's us just going, oh yeah, that was a good
You're
comment.
right. Yeah.
You're really
Yeah.
smart. Yeah,
We
I like that.
we've done that many times in the green room.
Yeah,
Like we're like,
like,
well,
which
let's
side are you going to take?
what topic are you going to talk about? Like
Right.
air. Well, yeah, air's pretty good. I'm a big fan of air.
I'm not so sure about air. Let's
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I'm gonna have to today. I'm anti-air.
right.
All about CO2.
Right.
But
Yeah.
because otherwise, yeah, it's just it's a 5-minute
Without
podcast,
the
right?
conflict, yeah,
So well,
there's got to be something.
but touching about what Dan was saying about that was, you know, and we've talked about it before in our show about there's that fear now. Here's that extra the fear of an instructor. Matter of fact, I think we talked about it on our last episode. Was the fear of being able to say like I don't know, as an instructor going like I
Right.
don't know, yeah but let's find out, and there's that the glow of ooh it's the esteemed sensei or whatever, uh and then being able to have this forum, this venue of a podcast of
Yeah.
having people listen to you and having X amount of downloads. So there's people. I know there are people out there listening to me,
There are. There are.
and so
At least like three.
yeah,
At
at
least
a
3.
grand
All,
total of two,
all
and
four of us. We'll have at least
Uh,
four
exactly
listens to this.
that's
right,
right.
exactly. So I mean, so I see the downloads. I'm like, okay, well, people are downloading it at the very least. So I assume people are listening. I'm not getting any feedback, and no one's calling me out. So I think I'm okay. But in class, I've got 3 or 4 students that have black belts in other systems, and so they know what they're talking about. So I guess what I'm trying to get at this is, for a long time, martial artists and martial arts instructors were sort of a single source of information for their school,
Mhm.
you know,
Oh,
and what they said kind of went because it was really hard to get a dissenting opinion. Like you couldn't talk to somebody else in your federation, you couldn't talk to anyone else in your style because you'd have to write a letter.
or outside of it, for that matter.
Yeah, and now here with like these sort of we put our stuff out every week or every 2 weeks or however often we want to put it out, and there's can be sort of instantaneous response, and we you know are the ones who are saying like call us out, or let
Mm.
us know what we're doing wrong, or, help us grow, and if it's like if we don't want to hear it, we probably shouldn't be podcasting,
Well,
you
Mm.
know,
certainly not. Yeah.
and if we can't, and I've had people send me email about things, and I'm like, well, post it on the forum or post it on the Facebook page. Don't
They
just
don't
tell
do it.
me.
They
If
don't
you're
do
mad
it.
at me, fine, be mad at me, but go tell the other guys so they hear it. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. And one of the number one rules of my dojo is do something even if it's wrong. So it's like put it out there. If you don't have the confidence to put it out there, right or wrong, you're not going to learn from it anyway. It's just going to be what it is.
Yeah, I think that's tough for people though, you know? I mean, it's sort of like I uh when I was doing Tai Chi back in the day, my instructor didn't have a school, so we did it in the park.
Mhm.
And I was very self-conscious. I was like, I felt weird about people looking at me,
Mm.
and it didn't really have anything to do with how good or bad I was. It was just like I felt silly doing it, right? So I think a lot of people have that hesitation with, I don't really want to put my opinion in a public space because I don't want to get blasted, you know, or I'm afraid to do something wrong or whatever the case might be.
It's the second half of that sentence, because people love to put their opinions in public, but they want to know that they've got some support for it from people that they value.
And yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point.
You know,
And
you look at any of the
and
socio-political conversation going on today. I have a pretty good mix of friends, you know, where they fall ideologically. And I see that in various ways, you know, like, so I'm thinking of somebody in particular, somebody who has very conservative views, but I know that the majority of this person's social groups are politically opposed. This person does not post much about their politics.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the people they are friends with are posting all the time.
Because
it's
they've
because
got
they
numbers.
go ahead, Andrew.
Because they feel like they've got support from
Yeah.
everyone else around them.
Yeah.
Ah,
And I think you can draw a correlation there with bullying and fighting, right? Like, you know, when we talk about self-defense, one of my rules of thumb when I teach self-defense is you are almost always going to be the smaller person. People don't generally step up to someone who is bigger. I'm 5'7", 165. I'm not a large guy. I don't generally step up to someone who's 6'3", 240 and say, "Hey, let's go." Right? I mean,
right.
not that I would do that anyway, but we're not going to expect that in a bullying situation, unless that person my height has 3 or 4 friends behind them,
Right.
and now they feel tough. Right? One of the biggest bullies in my middle school was someone who was actually quite a bit shorter than I was because he had 3 very large friends.
Yeah, you know, and I think too that you know, people fear that online, you know, and just hesitate to engage, or they think, you know, my voice or opinion isn't as valuable, or whatever the case may be. That it's just very difficult to get people to engage. And I know that for me, like, I listen to podcasts while I'm in the car. And so for me to then listen to a podcast, especially if I'm not on a platform where I can provide the feedback within the platform, right? So like if I'm watching YouTube, I can comment right below as I'm watching.
Yep.
If I'm on Spotify or
but
iTunes,
not while he's driving. Let's just be clear on that.
but not while I'm driving, right? If I'm on Spotify or iTunes, I then have to go offline of my podcatcher
Right.
to engage. And so that inertia of that second step is really rough, on top of the fact that when I can only do that after I'm done driving. So
But see,
if I listen to something on my commute, when I get to my office, not only am I hit with everything that I have to do for my job, but I also go, oh yeah, I meant to say something to those Karate Cafe guys about this. I'm like,
but
I'm not going to do that.
but I like that, and let me tell you why. Because that allows them to cogitate on it, right? You know, there's not that knee-jerk reaction of
Yeah,
our
you know what
favorite, our
happens
favorite, our favorite, our
when
favorite
I
pain point. You know,
cogitate on something, I generally go, nobody really cares nobody really cares what I think.
exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah, and there's that. But you know, like when we like to poke fun at our Taekwondo brethren and whatnot,
Right.
and I know I've gotten some feedback, let's say, on that, and but couched within, wrapped in the nougat center of our podcast is that we're all self-deprecating, and we all do the same thing and
Sure.
Oh
whatnot.
yeah.
Sure.
So but if you listen to it and there's no immediate way to like, yeah, you're wrong. I think, and this is for me, is like it gives you
Yeah.
time to think about it. Like the last couple weeks, I've had to transit between Texas and Arkansas, and so I load up, all my podcasts and whistlekick, and I'll load up, Invisible Sensei, and Okinawan Karate Podcast. I load all those up, Karate Without Belts, and I'm listening to it, and I'll be like, no. But I'm driving, and I'm driving for hours, so I got to stew on it. I'm like, although sometimes I'll stop and I'd like ping Andrew, like, and but it gives. I think not having an immediate turnaround is good as martial artists. I think because I'll say stuff in class and do stuff, and I want them to think about it. Right? I just want them to I like did it, or I'll say here's your homework. Figure that out.
And that's something that we talk about here on whistlekick all the time. And Jeremy, you mentioned it earlier that we just want people to think. Like we don't expect people to agree with us all the time, and it's totally fine if you don't. But I think Dan, you hit something there as well. You both did, in terms of a lot of people, myself included, listen to podcasts while driving, and I can't respond right away. And so if at the end of my drive, I'm still thinking about it and thinking about, I really need to send them or whatever, like that gives me the time to think about it and not give a quick knee-jerk reaction. But thinking about it is good, right? I mean, that's the whole reason we're doing this, to get people to think about stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point.
I kind of wish people would disagree with what we say more, because that's how I learn. I need that challenge. I need that discussion. And that's been one of the best things about Andrew joining the show, is that now I have somebody to bounce stuff off of in real time. And I think some of the episodes that we've turned out on Thursdays as a result of you joining the show are far better. I've become better. I think more, and he knows that because I'm shooting him emails at 9, 10 at night. It's like, what if we do an episode on this? Because it's just I'm cogitating. My brain's just kind of turning on subjects from recently and sometimes quite a ways past.
And that Best of the Best is a good movie.
It is.
It's one of the best.
And that concludes today's episode. I want to thank everyone for joining us.
Yes. And I told Andrew I want to get in on some of these, because I've got some fairly strong martial art movie geek whatnot. And that was another episode where I was driving. I was like,
I cannot tell you. It's almost a weird effect.
And yes, Chris Penn had martial arts experience, by the way.
What's that?
Well, that was one of the things you guys were talking about Chris Penn in there, and it's like, he had a black belt in like Taekwondo or something or whatever, despite his shape.
But yeah, one of the things that happens to me from a martial art movie standpoint, at least, is there are a lot of movies. I don't know why this is, but during some scene, the music in the background starts to sound like kumite, kumite, kumite. And I just hear that chant from the Van Damme movie, and it could be the silly, it just gives me that silly flash of
that drum.
It's that drum, right? Yeah. And I notice a lot of people use that kind of cadence to heighten excitement in the movie.
But your blood pumping.
Yeah, but it's very out of place when you're watching like Lord of the Rings or something. It's almost fun.
I wanted to get back to what Jeremy was saying, because I wanted to ask the question, like, do you guys go back and listen to your old shows? Like, I mean, like we like go back, or because sometimes I'm going there and when I upload the shows, and I'll scroll back through, and I'll be searching for something, like on a message board, someone, like, hey, we had an episode on that. Let me go find it out. And then I'll find myself.
Do you guys listen to your shows at all?
Listening to it and go like,
Andrew, do you still? You did, at least initially when you came on.
So I do listen to every episode for different reasons. So as you guys know, I'm not on the Monday episodes, right? So I listen to the Monday episodes because they're new to me, right? I have no idea who they are.
That's just a podcast for you then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, I might know who they are because I'm helping set up and scheduling them. And so I've interacted with them, but I don't necessarily know their story. Unless it's a famous person that we're getting on.
Or a friend of yours.
Or a friend of mine, which does happen fairly often, right? But I still listen to those episodes because to me it's just a podcast. I have gotten into the habit of listening to the Thursday episodes, even the ones we're doing, just to hear if I say something stupid that I want to be able to roll back in the future. But it helps me because we record parting the curtain a little bit, looking a little bit behind, like we don't record and then that episode is released the next day. So an episode is released, we may have recorded it potentially 2 months earlier.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I sometimes will want to hear like what we talked about so that because it might trigger something for me for a future episode.
All right. Yeah. And then,
because we are coming out with episodes so frequently, I need a constant, and I have a list on my iPad of like things that we're going to like, oh, this is a great topic idea. Or, this is a topic we can do. So I will sometimes, when I'm listening, I'm sometimes thinking of that.
Yeah. I'll listen to either our show or like when I'm editing it or when the production team here at the Massive Karate Cafe Studios, I think. And we have a list, Google Doc, and I drop it on there as a topic idea. But going in, and that's the other thing with us, like we, initially this was coming out like every week, like Pete and Gene were doing a show. And then when I took it over, I think I dropped it back to like maybe like once a month or like once every 2 weeks. Cause yeah, just the pace of putting them together and thinking about stuff and doing whatever, getting the crew here at the Massive Karate Cafe studio motivated to get it done. I think it adds a little more time to think about it, more time to go like, what was important, what was something that they, brought out that I want to, run down. It's a thoughtful process for us, and so that's why I was just wondering if you listen, because when I listen to the old shows, I kind of like, did I really think that? Oh yeah.
Well, and the other reason I listen is it makes our numbers go up. So
right,
that one more. It's important
by one.
Oh, believe me, I don't listen, but I definitely download.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Now the first, I'm trying to remember when Julius came on. Julius, I think most of our listeners know Julius is our audio engineer. He does a phenomenal job in putting together the graphics and the editing, and fortunately he does video too. So we're super lucky to have him.
Side note, Dan, let's get one of those.
You guys are legit, I gotta say. Jeez.
Only because of the sheer volume of things that we're doing. It's kind of insane.
Like, with us, it's just a couple of guys yakking. You guys actually like provide like real content and whatnot.
You guys provide real content. We just have different approaches. Mine is to spend as much money as possible trying to develop a brand. Yours is probably smarter than that.
Yeah,
I love your logo, by the way. Your logo is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that opening, like when that's on, I drive like I'm driving, and then it like gets quiet,
wakes you up,
and then whatever, like whatever listening to like I don't know, news or whatever, and then suddenly cars and I'm towing a camper, and I'm like,
I would say that Jeremy, you're talking about how the shows are different, but we're quote unquote, those watching a video, we're doing the same thing, but we're not. We're all totally different, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you guys on the show. Like I was talking to Jeremy beforehand, and I may have been listening to Karate Cafe before I started listening to whistlekick. It's entirely possible. I don't remember exactly when I started listening to whistlekick. But we're all different, but we're all the same, right? We're doing the same.
You canceled yourself. Good
Scandal.
Job.
Yeah, right.
And guess what's going on our website right now?
But just because we are doing the same thing, we're totally different. So we're not we're not fighting each other. Literally or figuratively, for listeners, because that's not what we're here for,
Right.
And that was kind of the thrust, I think, of why you guys suggested having us on, is the whole, like, it's not a competition. And it's, we said it many times in our show, we all wear pajamas and speak poor other language of that, whatever the style came from, we all do the same thing. So why are we all bickering all the time?
Right. And Andrew knows this is something that doesn't come up often on our show, so you guys may not have heard this, but I'll share it now just to make sure everybody's on the same page. What's our business model at whistlekick? We are not a podcast company. We're a martial arts company. We're a martial arts brand. And the whole gist is, if Paul, you're a tech guy, so you probably remember Google's original business model. If it gets them onto or keeps them on the internet, we'll make money. That's our business model as it relates to martial arts. If it gets people into and keeps them in the martial arts, eventually they'll find one of the things that we do or sell, and some of them will give us some money. So it does not matter if somebody else makes a better podcast. If somebody finds your show or literally any other show, and for real old school folks know, we have a website called martialartspodcast.com that's actually in the midst of getting renovated, where we're trying to list all of them. I mean, that's how open to competition we are. We're going to tell people, here are all the other places you can go to listen to martial arts shows. Because if they find a show that they like better than this one, and that engages with them and helps foster a martial arts lifestyle that resonates for them, they're more likely to keep training. And one, I think that's a good thing. I think we're all on the same page that martial arts is a good thing for people. And then two, it supports our business model. It keeps them in the martial arts. So
yeah,
cool.
I've always thought, regardless of what kind of effort you have, whether it be like a dojo or a podcast or whatever it is, you should have a mission statement, right? You should have a guiding principle that says that kind of pulls you back into saying, well, should we have a website that lists all the other martial podcasts? Won't that be competition for us? Isn't that terrible? Well, if you turn back towards your mission statement, and your mission statement is to educate the world about martial arts, then you go, oh, that perfectly aligns with our mission statement.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. You know, and I think this dovetails. Ooh, I hit my mic. Don't do that.
I can't because mine's up.
Yeah, see, you don't have to worry about that, Paul. But it dovetails nicely into the discussion that Jeremy and I have often had of the concept of there being a McDojo, right? That quote, that word McDojo, which I've never been a fan of, right? Because, you know, it implies that it's a bad school. Well, maybe it's a bad school for me, but it might not be a bad school for the person that's over there. The person that's over there really loves what they're doing. And who am I to say what you're doing is wrong, right? And if they're enjoying what they're doing, that means they will not enjoy the school that I train at. And the school that I train at will not be one that I would not enjoy being at that school. Right. That doesn't mean it's bad.
And, you know, and so the kind of the thrust of Karate Cafe, you know, back in the day when it was started and whatnot, was kind of like, you know, that was the sort of linchpin, is like, no matter what school you're in, we all have, you know, that guy.
Right.
You know, we all have that guy, or we all have the person that does blah. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what system you're in, what style you're in, what school, nothing. We all have that guy. We all have that student. We all have that instructor. We've all met that
Everybody
guy,
has somebody who doesn't wash their uniform often enough.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you talk about. You know, that's what the conversation is like, you know, and then once we all understand that we all have that guy or gal, you know, that, or that them, whatever, then that brings us together. You know, there's the division point gone, because, hey, we all have, you know, the person never washes a gi, you know, and and we have that story, and or, you know, whatever your uniform of choice is. But that's what brings us together. And then that cascades with, like, you know, we all do a middle block of some kind. Who cares about the nuances or whatever, the application, and that will bring us back together as a whole. So with a podcast, it's the same thing. It's like, you know, if you want something specific, if you want the, you know, everyone else martial arts sucks podcast, you know, then that podcast is no doubt out there somewhere.
If we launched a show called that, I guarantee it would be bigger than both of our shows
huge.
Combined in 5 episodes.
It would be huge.
And I'm getting that domain right now.
Go for it.
I thoroughly believe that most of the internet is designed just so you can tell other people they're wrong.
Yeah, so remove.
Yeah.
So we recently, I shouldn't say we, because it's not a we yet. It's a me experimenting with TikTok. And I spent a few weeks on TikTok just kind of digging around, and what I loved about it is the fastest way to consume funny animal videos. It's even better than YouTube. It's great. And then I started checking out the martial arts content, and it is exactly what you're saying, Dan. It's so negative. And literally you'll see someone demonstrate, you know, a 60 or 90-second video of a concept, a broad concept. And the number of people who just say, wrong. They won't even elaborate. They won't even say how they're wrong. They won't say, you know what, you really suck. You're doing this poorly. Not even the cliches of my instructor told me, or that would never work on the street, which there are plenty of those. But just wrong. And I actually responded to somebody once. It was like, if you're gonna essentially attack someone in that way, have the courtesy to at least explain your
Yeah,
perspective.
defend your
Give them
speech.
the opportunity to respond or possibly learn from what you're saying instead of only making it a negative statement.
Yeah. And it's funny, one of the ones I've seen like that hurts my heart the most is uh if you go out to YouTube and type in black belt test, right?
Mm.
You're going to see some of the
Yeah.
most horrific and ugly martial arts you've ever
And we
seen.
all know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just,
Yeah. And the unfortunate part is that then if you scroll down to the comments, you will really see the ugly side of the internet and martial arts, right?
Mhm.
And because it's one thing to say, oh, this person shouldn't be a black belt and they don't have any skill and blah 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 blah. I have to think to myself, how were you thinking that comment improved the world? It's just like, are you trying to inform? Are you trying to educate? Or you're just being a dick,
yeah.
and that's
What's the
about it.
value add?
It-
Right.
it's it's modern bullying.
It's
It's
modern
modern
bullying.
adult bullying. It's I want to feel better about who I am by throwing someone else
Wow.
under the bus.
Yeah, you're right, because if
If you did that in
I
junior
can
high,
feel
you got
right,
punched.
Mhm.
yeah, if I can feel right by telling you that you're wrong, then I feel good about myself, even though I just put a comment that says wrong.
Right.
And I
And
can be like,
it should be,
haha, I got
wow,
him.
if your technique is so much better than mine, you must be really good at what you're doing. Well done, man. Good
Yeah.
job training so much. And I'm just trying to keep up. Well done.
And I feel like a lot of that comes from this misunderstanding that a black belt or anything within the martial arts is equatable.
Well,
I
yeah.
would,
Yeah.
I have black belts in under 3 different instructors, 3 different styles. And I'm not saying that to brag. I'm saying that merely to lay the context that all 3, the pursuit of which, the testing for, the requirements of, the responsibilities of, are dramatically different.
Totally different. Yeah.
And so am I going to say, well, that's not a black belt because the thing that I did first is a black belt? Why does that symbol, why is that the right one? Why is that other one not the right one?
Yeah.
Why is it that over there is a black belt and what I earned the first time was a higher caliber black belt or equivalent of, a second or third degree in this other system?
Yeah.
Why does it have to be the negative perspective?
Yeah. And you're absolutely right, because I think one of the things that you learn in your martial journey is that, as amusing as it is, and cliched as it is, the belt doesn't mean anything. It's there to hold up your pants, right? And
It doesn't even do that.
Right. It
Right.
doesn't even do that.
Just hold your stuff together. Right.
Right. And Paul and I have talked
Or
about
matches
this
the shoes.
before. It means something within the context of that style,
Mhm.
and more so in the context of that particular school.
Exactly.
And that's about all you can attribute
Context is
to
everything.
it. Is okay, you can get some kind of judgment within that style, and then you can, you walk into that school and that's the black belt you got that's the school you got that black belt from.
Right.
Then you should be seen with a bit of respect in that school,
Mhm.
right? Because if you didn't, you shouldn't be there. But like, that belt is really just within that context. It
Right.
doesn't mean anything. Like a black belt in Wing Chun is system complete, and you get it after 5 years, right?
Does anybody in the world think that if I go to my local community college and earn a bachelor's degree, that it is equivalent to me attending Harvard and earning a
There you go.
bachelor's degree? Does anybody walk around saying, you didn't go to Harvard, you didn't go to Yale, it's not Cornell, it's not a bachelor's degree? We don't do that. We are the snake eating its tail. We are incredibly good at that.
Yeah, you're absolutely
And
right.
it is one of the things that I have and will continue to rail against louder and louder as our platform grows, because it does not serve our industry.
No. Yeah, it really doesn't. I think it's a disservice, really. And I think it's a populist kind of confusion where most just normies see a black belt as all the same thing,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
it's been so popularized in culture that it has some kind of, you know, right, yeah, there's some woo woo to it kind of thing.
It should come
um
with like little lights that shine up on your belt.
that
You
would be
know,
cool. I
little
like that.
impractical. But
And
I
now
was
I'm gonna
listening
have to
to a
figure out how to
podcast
put
recently about
LEDs on my.
some dude, I don't know who it was, and he switched schools and he had like a brown belt in one style, and then he had a black belt in some other style, Shotokan or something, and then his instructor like let him wear his black belt, and then after a while he like gave him a black belt so that way it was just like kind of a plain black belt. I don't know, some guy, I don't know, some schmo. But he said it's Andrew is what I'm talking about. I'm talking about
I got
Andrew.
it.
Yeah, I was waiting to like
There's
so
actually a piece of
Dan
my journey that is almost exactly what you just said.
and and he because in my dojo when people start with me, even when they start, I start them at white belt. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not because it's like, oh, your black belt is not valid, and it's like because you're. Yeah, when I go to
Context,
someone else's dojo,
nuance.
I put on a white belt,
Yeah.
you know, and like I was training as a black belt at a Kyokushin school, and you know we were doing basics and we were counting off, and they got down to me, and so I started counting, and I got done counting, and the head instructor goes like, "Well, I guess we can all agree that he's probably not really a white belt." Or something like that, or
Right.
like for those of you who are wondering what rank he was, you can tell he's not a white belt, and but and we did the thing, but I have them wear their white belt because within the system, I want
Right.
them to kind of get an idea of where they are relative to the system. I don't know what, but after listening to that episode, I was kind of like, well, because other people in our federation just kind of let them wear their black belt. Is I think I'm probably going to do something like that, like switch and go like, okay, here's not your Chishi black belt, from whatever system you are, but people should know that when they're training with you, they're training with somebody at a black belt level,
Mhm.
Mhm.
so. Just for context, when you walk in, which is the whole reason why the rank system was really created, depending
Right.
on which story you want to believe.
There's so many ways we could get more creative to do that, but again, it comes back to here we go yet again. It's ego. You know, I've done both. I've stepped in, I've kept my black belt, I've stepped in and put on a white belt, and I learned so much more as a white belt. And
It's
any
true, right?
and it is so much fun to stand in the back of the room and have nobody watching you. Nobody cares if you get it right. There's no pressure. It is amazing. That
Yeah.
Well,
first day white
what I
belt.
like
Go ahead.
What I like is when I go to a dojo and I put on a white belt, and I used to have when I went on my road shows just a plain white gi, like I didn't have
Mhm.
like my federation or anything on it and stuff like that, and I put on a white belt, and to see what happens in the class, like who like like yellow belts or green belts or whatever
Mhm.
step up and go like, oh no you do it like this, and
Right.
and the instructor always knows who I am, or who I am, that I've got training and whatnot, but that generally doesn't float down to the rest of the class really, and so who is open enough to go like, oh this is the way we do our mental block, this is the way we do it, okay, I'm like, okay, cool, and it's not, I don't look at it as like, who are you to be talking to me, dude, is like, oh, well, this is someone who's trying to impart their system, is trying
Yeah.
to impart that, trying to perpetuate their system kind of the way, I think it should be.
Mm.
And I find that really interesting.
Well, and I think it's very much a case by case basis. I attended a seminar with Ian Abernathy a number of years ago. He was here in the States,
Like,
and
cool.
obviously that was
Very
a
cool.
seminar, so it didn't really matter, right? Everybody wore their black belt, was fine. But I traveled to Scotland that next summer and was only a couple hours away from his dojo, so. I'm like, well, I mean, I'm here. I contacted him ahead of time. He's like, yeah, come on down. So I brought a white belt because that's what I also do. And I'm getting ready. I come out of the changing room and I've got my white belt on, and Ian Abernathy's like, Andrew, why do you have a white belt on? You're a black belt. I'm like, well, yeah, but I'm visiting and I thought it would be appropriate. It's like, it's totally up to you. It's fine if you want to wear a black belt. You earned it. I also was only there for one class, right? I wasn't going to be long term. But he's like, no. Wear your black belt. It's totally fine. I don't care. So it definitely depends on the instructor as well, and what they feel comfortable, and what the scenario is, that what your intention is in your training.
Yeah. I went to a Goju school and I asked, actually, the head instructor wasn't there. It was one of the senior students. And I said, do you want me to wear a white belt or black belt? And he goes, well, are you a black belt in Goju? And
Hmm.
I was like, okay, fair enough, or whatever, you know. And it was a little like I was like, okay,
And
you
there
know. But
again, it's a symbol, and that symbol means different things. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
in that school, wearing a black belt in those four walls meant you were a black belt of that system.
Yeah.
I get it. You know, when in Rome, when in Scotland, right? I'm sure if you, Andrew, if you had remained at Ian's school and kept training, there would have been a longer conversation, and likely you would have worn a white belt indefinitely. But
Possible.
being that it was one class,
Yep.
Right.
right? So
and I
it becomes different things, because in that context, your black belt, you were a visiting black belt,
Mhm.
not a visiting new student to remain and learn.
yeah, I visited a dojo once, and I was watching. I watched a class, and the head instructor was like a seventh degree and whatever. And you know, I talked to him and said like I'm just in town for like a month or whatever. We were just staying there, and I said so I'd just like to come and train.
Hmm.
And they were like, well, you know, you'll have to join, and so you can't wear your black belt. You're gonna have to wear a white belt. And I'm like, and the way they said it was kind of like I could tell they did not want me to come train at that school, you know,
Mhm.
for whatever reason. And I was like, okay, no problem. And I like reached in my bag and I pulled out a white belt, and they were still like, you know, okay. And then they, you know, did some Tai Sabak and whatnot, and they did not end up training at that dojo, but
I'm
it was like
surprised.
they they clearly was trying to use that as the linchpin to keep me from that I was going to have to go wear a white belt, and you know, like
Yeah.
whoop, here you go.
Now, why do you
irony
think they
is-
didn't want you to train there? I have a theory, but I wasn't there.
Would you do you honestly want me to say it, or do you want me to
Yeah, I do.
politically podcast it? Because while they were a seventh degree, they were mostly teaching like kids or whatever, and technically they weren't very good. And
You were
they
going to
were
show them up.
Ouch.
You were going
they
to undermine
yeah.
their
I spoke with
hierarchy.
a friend of mine that's in the town that he studies Ishindu, and has known this instructor for a really long time. They're like, yeah, they didn't want you on the floor because they also did weapons, and this is and no, Andrew, I don't agree. You said bow staff, unironically.
I did
They-
say bow staff once. You're right.
yes, and that is wrong, and we'll have
Bow
more
staff stick.
we'll talk about that again in the green room. They said, and this is totally out of context for anyone who's not an Okinawan, but they said they were getting ready to say, okay, next kata, Suishi no kun bo. And if you study Okinawan art, you know, kun is the word for staff.
Staff, yeah.
And so I was like, but because they were a Japanese system that had trained with some other guy to do, you know, whatever, and you know, and I was like, okay. And I watched
Yeah.
it, and whatever technique. I mean, I'm not a kabuto master by any stretch of the imagination or anything, but I was like, So when I talked to my buddy across town, he was like, yeah, they didn't want you on the floor. 'Cause there were actually three different dojo that all trained with the same guy from a kabuto standpoint, and I messaged them all, and none of them wanted me to come train. And they said they don't want you on their floor because they're all 6 and 7s, and they don't want someone else coming in. And I mean, wouldn't have done that.
Well, although I mean, I think there's kind of an ancient culture of dojo busting, right?
Oh,
And I understand an initial hesitation from an instructor, but
Yeah, and that's
if
why I started when I started going on the road. I stopped emailing from my dojo address
Hmm.
because you know they have my dojo address. That's my signature. They go on the website. They see the other instructor. You know, and then I started doing it from the Karate Cafe address, going like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm in town. I do martial arts. Let's get together and train." And I started getting more response from that rather than from my dojo address because
Yeah.
at that point it was kind of, you know, I
'Cause-
wasn't as threatening or whatever.
Because yeah, dojo busting, I don't know if it is still a thing, but it used to be a thing for sure.
Yeah.
Where people would just come and challenge your instructor and say, I'm gonna beat you up if you don't defend yourself using your martial arts, and then I'm gonna show to all your students that you know your techniques are bunk, kind of thing.
It's a
And
thing,
see,
but
now
you know
there's
where it's a thing now?
Where?
MMA gyms.
Oh,
yeah.
right, of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
I've seen and heard of nothing. Not to say it doesn't happen, but I've seen and heard of nothing of that happening in the last
Yeah.
at least 10, probably 20 years in a traditional
And see
school.
now you guys are all podcast busting because you're all coming on with your cheap mics and whatnot and your high episode count, and they go, oh, there's Karate Cafe guys. He's got that janky headset thing going on.
That's
and
right. They don't even have a real microphone.
Don't even have 200
your
episodes.
audio levels are consistent. Julius is going
Right.
to love editing your track because your
See, I'm
volume
gonna
is going to be
move.
the
See, I'm
same
moving
across
like
the
this.
whole. Yep.
That's
What's
right.
going on?
If I
That's
turn
true.
around over here, you know, it changes
Ah.
everything.
Me too.
I'm gonna get
That's
hate
funny.
mail now.
So in your face. But I am still going to get a cool Shishi mic at some point.
Well, we got to wind down because we didn't. We should have played. Andrew, we should have left like 4 hours for this because I bet we
Right?
could have talked to these guys like
Yeah.
all day. And I've got another one coming in 20 minutes that I got to go prep for.
Oh, geez. Okay.
Yeah. We didn't stack this, and that's on me. So my bad. If people want to find you, I mean, we've mentioned the name of the show a few times, but let's mention a few more social media websites. If you guys do a Patreon or tip jar or anything like that, let's throw it all out there.
We have had
Patreon, Paul. Remember that.
Yeah, I know. I did. Well, ever since, and I have to spell it, Jeremy, because you make sure to spell it every time. You didn't
Jeremy
spell it
doesn't
that
have
time.
to. We've got this.
Oh, look at
that's
that.
right. Yeah.
He's
Graphic.
been waiting.
Nice.
He's been waiting the whole time to do that.
That's old school
Just waiting for you to
CG.
mention.
Well, I had
Patreon.
a listener write to me and say it took me hours to find it because I was misspelling it. I didn't realize I was doing patron.com.
Oh.
Right.
And I went, it's just, you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And and that's a whole other thing. Like with the Zoom thing, was like now Patreon is kind of a thing. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, you think people would know it, but apparently people don't.
Not everybody.
But no, I was trying to figure out a reason to have a Patreon account. And Dan even did a Bitcoin thing for us.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't you? Did Bitcoin? But no, Karate Cafe. That's where we've been for these 15 years. And you can go in there. We have a donate. We actually got a donation the other day.
Nice.
for randomly. And we have an Amazon link for people who are shopping at Amazon. It's all right there on the page. karatecafe@gmail.com. We have a Twitter, Karate Cafe. Oh, like you say, like at Karate Cafe everywhere else. But really, it's only Twitter because I can't. Someone asked me the other day, is like, why don't you have an Instagram account? I'm like, what am I going to put on there? I don't know what the kids use that for. So
Pictures
yeah.
of faces.
Just me recording a show. There's Dan.
That's
Yeah.
what my personal Instagram is.
I think between a full-time job and all kinds of other stuff, like the show recording is pretty much all Paul and I can manage to squeeze in.
Yeah,
I get it. I
Pretty much, yeah.
understand.
because the massive Karate Cafe studio is pretty empty. But yeah, and we have the Facebook page, Karate Cafe, and where we encourage people to come and talk and post stuff and do whatever and start the conversation, keep the conversation going, and just share.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure we link all that stuff, from our show notes and when we post on social and all that good stuff.
Awesome.
Yeah. This was fun. We're gonna have to do this again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I just checked YouTube, and you guys have 2.37 thousand subscribers. We have 20, so
scrappy.
20,000?
20.
Oh,
but we really just started doing that again.
well,
right.
then don't compare.
It's industrial slurry.
I was just
our
thinking of where people
process.
can find us.
Yeah, it's
Yes, you can find us in.
You
I
know,
was
we're-
going to go back
Go
and
ahead.
start posting like all the old audio episodes and
Yeah.
like trying to
There you
bulk
go.
that up, but I just the tech team here at the studio is overwhelmed.
Do you use Libsyn
No,
as
for
your host? Okay.
no, we Blueberry. Is
Okay,
who
I don't know
we're-
how to do it with that. If it was Libsyn, I could show you how to do it. You could dump all the old episodes back to YouTube pretty quickly.
Ooh,
I can't help
yeah,
you with Blueberry.
I should probably.
They-
Just
I bet
Google
they
it.
have a way. If there's a way to dump that out from Blueberry,
Yeah.
then you could probably do it.
There probably is, but yeah, that's I guess probably also one of the challenges with podcasting is like trying to stay on the most convenient. Like I'll hear people like, I'm on Stitcher, I'm on like, ooh, what is that? I forgot. I have to go. Do I need to be on that too? It's Spotify. We just recently got on Spotify, and big,
Yeah.
it's-
You got to be everywhere. You got to make it easy for people
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
as we talked, it's everybody's attention is so pulled in so many different ways, and we're talking about it from the context of shows, but it's something, we have a lot of martial arts school owners and instructors that are listening right now, and they're experiencing the same thing. The world is trying to pull attention away, and if what you deliver, whether it's classes or some non-martial arts job content, if it's not so compelling that it bubbles to the top, they're out. they're going to put their attention somewhere else. The actions that we take are based on value and what
For
we
sure.
value most.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yeah, and I'd love to do this again, especially in one of
Yeah.
the Martial Geekery episodes. I'd
Let's
love
do it.
to get in there. I'm waiting. I'm going to listen to the How to Fight Dalton here pretty soon.
Curious what you think. We're recording a third one today. Can't
One
tell
of-
you. Can't
Oh.
tell you what it is on air. You
Ooh.
know, we can tell you off.
Right. One of my students, he does that. We have a block, it's block sweep, and then jab and that, and he always roadhouse. That's his whole thing. And so,
I love
or doronole in bad Japanese or whatever. So
Nice.
Well, I want to thank you guys both for coming
Yeah.
on the show. This was a lot of
fun.
fun.
Yeah,
and
tons.
I look forward to getting
thank you
together
very
again.
much.
I'm glad you guys thought to do this. This is a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Thanks for
Considered us
coming.
worthy enough to waste your time.
Of
It's
course,
appreciated.
Whatever.